So, welcome to He Believes, She Feels episode 2. I have the lovely Kristin Windsor here, mentor. She's helped me throughout my journey. I've worked for her. She's amazing, and she helps all types of people ascend to a higher level of consciousness by healing trauma and unifying mind, body, and soul. Welcome.
Hello, thanks so much for having me. I'm grateful to connect.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Um, I'm thankful for you to be here. And let's like dive right into it. So tell the audience a little bit about your story, your journey, and how you got to where you are now.
Absolutely. Thank you for that invitation. So, my journey began as a young child, but I am going to share the journey of my inner evolutionary hero, which is the parts of me with the personal stories from ages 12 until the present day. And this specifically references the language of self aspects, which is part of the modalities that I use. And by talking about those stories in the third person, it gives me as awareness and my present moment self more power to be the observer rather than to be suckled into the stories of the past and to be able to reclaim the narrative. Because when I describe it in first person, my body responds like that is the present experience and that is the present self. And when I describe it in the third person, it gives my body and my nervous system more space to be the observer and to know that that's not something that's presently occurring. So, just to preface, this is the story of my inner evolutionary hero. So, her journey begins as a young child, and by age 9, 10, 11, really severe anxiety and insomnia had begun, and there was no explanation of why. There was no insight of why it was happening or what to do about it. And by early teenagehood, it had compounded to psychosis type experiences and dissociative blackouts. And little was it realized at the time that it was a really just complex PTSD, basically, because of suppressed childhood trauma. And so continue on. And throughout adulthood, teenagehood, and adulthood, it was complex PTSD, insomnia, night terrors, flashbacks, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, phobias, ADHD, like could not focus to save my life, bipolar, just up and down, all over the place, mania, psychosis, hallucinations, hearing voices, seeing things, just kind of a distorted perception of reality, intermittent explosive disorder, basically massive amounts of rage where the body can't hold it, can't control it, and it leads to the body making unconscious choices from a place of really intense anger, hearing voices, dissociation, fragmentation of self, borderline personality, and dissociative identity disorder. So it's like different presentations of who the self believed it to be. Like you think confronting your ego is hard, try confronting like 20 different egos inside of you that all have totally different everythingness and no agreements on who they are or what life is. And severe self-harm. I still have over 150 visible scars on my body, and that's after many years of having, that's old news, but that continued for 10 full years because it was the only coping tool that allowed for the body to be copable, just to like tolerate existing inside of a body. Substance abuse, addiction, lots of alcohol, lots of drugs for that 10-year period, eating disorders, obsessive compulsions, body image issues, just really just a distorted existence, really. And it was all just riddled with trauma. And so my inner evolutionary hero, past version of self, went through 10 years of different traditional therapies and literally exhausted the system to a point where the mental health care system was like, I'm sorry, we've done everything we can. You've literally used all of our therapists, all of our psychiatrists, all of our modalities, DBT, CBT, EMDR. We have nothing left to help you, and basically kicked me out of the system. And it was like, I'm sorry, you're just stuck like this. And so there was just a point of like, I'm just going to end up in a psych ward and maybe live a few miserable years and die young and have an existence that wasn't worthwhile. And that was kind of the frame of reference of identity during her early 20s. And so that was kind of the preface. And then it got worse. There was a variety of complex traumas during adulthood, including sexual and physical assaults. And with each thing that happened, all the health challenges got worse and worse. And with every step of more and more traditional therapy and medications, not helping, everything got worse and worse and worse. And it peaked in 2017 when my past version of self began to lose the ability to create new conscious memories. It's called anterograde amnesia. And so the personal autobiographical episodic memories where you're like, yeah, I went to the beach last week and it was this temperature and I did this, and I'm a sense of self who personally experienced that. None of that was happening for half a decade. And so in 2017, that started. It was gradual, lost the ability to create new conscious memories. And there was all this just dissociation and disconnection, mind body disconnection, all the stuff. And so then it began a new journey. And so my inner evolutionary hero actually stumbled upon a book at the library, and it was about healing the fragmented selves of trauma survivors. And it dove into a technique that used internal family systems model and parts work, and it mentioned neuroscience. And at that point, nobody had mentioned neuroscience. No one had said, oh, you have a left and a right brain hemisphere that could be affecting what you're experiencing. Nobody had ever said you have an autonomic nervous system that could be dysregulated right now. Like none of that had ever been a part of the conversation for 10 years of therapies. And so at that point, my past version of self had no knowledge of neuroscience, the nervous system, brain hemispheres. Like those were new terms. Like she had just been learning about mental health. And it was like, at that point, it was mind blowing to hear like, oh, there's a word called dissociation that describes what I'm experiencing. And so to discover that there could be like a scientific reason that it's happening and something you can do to transform the root cause of it was something that was brand new. And so she found this book, was like, this is a technique that would be more helpful than anything I've been provided in all of these years of care. And it's mentioning neuroscience, which is actually pointing to the root cause. And so she dove into researching neuroscience, shifting away from researching mental health. Because at that point, there's nothing about mental health that correlates with neuroscience.
Yeah.
It's just the descriptions of your symptoms and talk therapy that does absolutely nothing to transform the root cause. And upon discovering there's a better way to heal and there's an understanding of the science of the root cause, she cold turkey quit everything, quit her therapies, quit her medications, went on weeks of withdrawal from the psych meds, had just gone through that was actually a week before there was another physical assault, all by trusted people at the time, people who had had their own traumas that were affecting their patterns unconsciously. And so there's just a lot of intensity going on. And she courageously began what later came my implicit revelations case study, which at this point is something I've invested over 20,000 hours in to understand what's happening. So that's kind of the preface. Before I continue, any questions with that like introductory segue?
Yeah, no, the question I believe with the audience, we talked about that there's parts that you don't remember, she doesn't remember, and she doesn't remember that you don't have that had the memory. How do you think she got to where she was by not, because she couldn't remember, but she dove into these books, right? And I know we talked a little bit off camera in regards to like how she come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
To talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Perfect. I will. So that hasn't happened yet in the story. So I'll segue into that. Thank you. Thank you. So that was kind of the introduction. And then in 2017 is when she started to lose the ability to create new memories and started to research neuroscience. And so then from there, there's kind of a jump because there is this 5-year gap of not having memories. So that's my first inner evolutionary hero. Now we go to my next inner evolutionary hero, the next stage of that past version of self. She was a very different person. She grew into great wisdom. She grew into great courage and resilience and activation of an inner power that she didn't know that she had. And so it became this journey of, I'm not here to necessarily like heal what's happening. I'm here to just like connect deeper with me and like learn about it. And so, long story short, from 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, my past version of self invested 24/7 basically in her case study and self-healing. And Her full-time job, if you will, was the case study, which she had a platform to share and had people coming in to witness the journey. And that brought in financial income as well. And then providing one-on-one sessions to be a mentor and a coach to other people going through similar things. And she was learning all these different ways to move through it and learning about the subconscious and stuff. And so there was that kind of full-time work, if you will. And then her real full-time work was literally 24/7 healing. And so she taught herself neuroscience. And in that process, she couldn't create new memories. And she gradually developed these techniques to move through it anyway. And that was an opportunity to learn about unconscious memories being created inside of the body. And so we have the conscious memories where we can reach them in our minds, and we have, lists or images or stories or dialogue, and we can describe them and understand them through expression. But then there's unconscious memories, and unconscious memories cannot be accessed through the mind. They cannot be described. It's literally impossible. If you think you're describing it, you're describing a conscious memory, because unconscious memories are the patterns of feeling and movement in the body that affect our emotions and choices in a way that moves beyond anything that can be verbally described. And it doesn't, there might be an image, for example, of a memory, but that's still the conscious memory. When it's connected with a pattern of feeling and movement in the body, that's the segue to kind of try to reach in there. But you can't really reach unconscious memories intentionally through the mind. And so it was this profound opportunity, because for those 5 years, unconscious memories were being created, and unconscious memories hold our procedural data, our learned motor skills. And so, for example, I'm able to talk right now because there's a learned motor skill, or there's a procedure inside of my brain and my body that allow me to know the English language, right? If there's someone who's learned a different language, they wouldn't understand what I'm saying necessarily, because maybe they speak Spanish or French or German, but not English. And so there's a procedural pattern in my brain and my body that allows me to know the English language. And so basically, that my inner evolutionary hero was able to create patterns of automatic unconscious procedural memory carrying the information about the neuroscience she was learning. And so she would go and spend all of these hours on YouTube videos and going through courses that she found online and reading these incredible books. And she would, highlight and make notes, and she had whole systems, and she had just like literally like college textbook level pile of books and notebooks on her laptop, and it was like heavy as can be, and she'd carry that around, and she'd go work outside because she was trying to get grounded and be grounded in the process with all the dissociation. And one of the memories I recovered is that she would go and she would look at these books that she'd been reading, and she'd open them up and she'd see all these highlights, she'd see all of these notes, and she would feel this full body terror, anxiety, and panic, because she's seeing her handwriting, but she has no memory of ever opening that book, no memory of ever highlighting those words, no memory of ever making those notes. And she was like, I just have to pretend that I'm brand new to this moment, and it was my past self who made that, not me. And that was part of where the tool that I'm using now was really helpful, because she'd go in and be like, okay, that's not my handwriting, that's her handwriting. And immediately the body and the nervous system was like, oh, okay, we accept that. I understand that as a reality, because there wasn't this connection of the me I am today is the same me that was there yesterday. And so that was a way that the language of parts really was of benefit during some really challenging times. And so she'd go and she'd make these notes and stuff, and she just accepted that she wouldn't remember it. But the most beautiful part is she would reread these books and come to the same conclusions. Like, she would go and be reading, and she would pick up a pen and go to make a note, and it was literally already written on the page, even though she didn't remember writing it. So there was kind of this like unconscious competency or something
Ghost
where
memory, as we call it, right?
yeah. And the body was remembering and was kind of processing it. It just wasn't accessible. And so at that point, the brain and the body were resetting every 5 seconds to 5 minutes, which means every 5 seconds to 5 minutes, that's a short period of time,
Yeah.
the brain would reset, and there was no memory of Who am I? Where am I? What was I just doing? What was just happening? What was I just experiencing? And it was like that for all of 2018, all of 2019, and then it was very gradually healing beyond that. But in that time, there was, excuse me, apologies. In that time, there was this inner awareness of everything that was preceding the experience, which is the opportunity to understand the unconscious body mind in an intimate way. And so while we might be up here, for example, I'm here and there's kind of just a stillness in my mind and a coherence and a clarity, and I have awareness of my surroundings and I have awareness of this external experience of having a conversation. None of that was accessible. But internally, there was this dissociative awareness, if you will, almost, of all of the stuff that precedes our experience. There were thought fragments of the neural activity that is basically the subconscious. And so what most people would have to go to, like a really deep self-hypnosis session to become aware of, for example, was her constant reality, but she couldn't be grounded in physical reality. And so she started to study the root origin of her thoughts and her feelings. And she's like, okay, I notice when I have this panic response here, 2 seconds before that, there was this thought fragment correlated with this sensation here and this thing here and this whatever. She could trace back the hidden neural activity that preceded the sensations of experience that we observe consciously. She called that her inside out theory of consciousness, where she could observe her body mind, but not her conscious mind.
Now you mentioned before that she used the tool, right? Can you describe and go into a little bit more detail some of the tools that she used that you can remember to get to this level?
Yeah, so let me finish that story first, and then I'll share the tool that healed it all. So there was all those challenges that I described, and then during this 5 years, she was living with aphasia, where she would chronically lose the ability for physical speech and mental narration. There was split brain hemispheres, where she could only use half of her brain and her body at a time. There was a total mind-body disconnect. It felt like 1,000 disruptive voices, thought fragments, and the body was just flooded with trauma sensations, unable to feel the present moment, disruptions of heart rate variability. There was tachycardia or bradycardia, where the heart rate was like in that really unhealthy lower high range all of the time. Massive disarray in physical health. She was on ice packs every few hours to cope with the pain and reduce the inflammation. The nervous system was so dysregulated. There was chronic loss of consciousness, just chronic fainting and dorsal vagal collapses. And it was so habitual, it led to oxygen deprivation. So she was on oxygen tubes every hour, every day for several years. There's over 50 unique types of dissociation that were identified through my case study. Daily age regression, where her brain and her body would neurobiologically revert to the activity of a young child, regressing chronically to ages 2 and 4 years old. And then for a time when it was really intense, uprooting the foundation of that suppressed early life trauma, the brain and the body age regressed to 6 months, 6 months young. And during these 5 years, she could not recognize herself in a mirror. In 2018, 2019, when she would look in a mirror, half of her face would leave her body, be about a foot or so forward in front and down here. And so looking in a mirror, half of her face was literally over here. And there was no recognition of the part of the face that was disconnected from the body. And overcoming the fear of that by just being present with it with love supported the process of healing. And so 2017, 18, 19, 20, through one modality, which I will share, all of this was healed. My past self never worked with anyone outside of her during that period. She didn't have any assistance or guidance from anyone or anything outside of her. And she achieved 100% healing resolution. Like not just a reduction, not just coping with it, but a 100% resolution of the root cause of every single thing I've described.
Tell me more.
I know, it's so juicy. Well, and it blows my mind because even the way that my brain organizes the memory, it doesn't feel like me because everything was just being processed so differently at that time. And so achieve 100% healing resolution. and then came out. It was the beginning of 2021, and it actually took about 3 months to fully realize and acknowledge, but I had no memory of my life. And that's where I came forward, because that's when new memories kind of started to be created. And I started to feel like me, like just getting to like feel like yourself was when it gradually started. And it's been very, very gradual. And couldn't remember those past 5 years of healing, couldn't remember my original childhood, couldn't remember any of the years that I've shared about here, no memory whatsoever, and still couldn't recognize myself in a mirror and had no sense of self. There was no association of, hey, I'm Kristen and this is who I am and this is what I like and this is what I do and this is the type of person that I am. Like there was no understanding of that. The whole identity was I teach myself neuroscience. I create new healing modalities, and I'm in my implicit revelations case study. And so started everything over because there was no memory of what had been used to heal all that time. There was no memory of using the modality that I'm prepping to share with you. And so she started all over again. And she started from scratch. But little did she realize she was using that modality instinctively, automatically, without even trying.
That's
And she didn't
crazy.
even recognize it until later. And so then she went through her case study all over again and was doing trial and error with different techniques and like, oh, okay, I noticed that, I slept longer here, or I felt more connected here, or my mind and my body were more connected, or I felt more connection with who I saw in a mirror. So this must be working. So let me use more of it. Trial and error process. And again, this was full time, 24/7. It was, I'm doing my case study, I'm offering my sessions, and I'm all about inner work of healing. That was like, there was nothing outside of that for all of this time. And again, it was all done independently on her own, through her own inner guidance. And so gradually started to integrate everything. Never had to look back at any past experience. That's the most important part. Never had to look back at past traumas. Never had to look back at any of the things that I've actually shared with you here. And everything was getting integrated, where it shifted the instinctive patterns of navigation that precede our thoughts, our feelings, our personality, our choices, all of that. And just started to notice, wow, I can remember this period of my life, but there's no like emotional charge to it, right? There's no responses in the body. Like I have the autobiographical narrative and it's fully integrated in my body, and I didn't even work with the details of the memory to integrate it. How is this happening? Like, how is this happening? Like I recognize who I see in the mirror. I recognize who I see in these past pictures and videos of me when I couldn't. How am I doing this? And so that was the case study diving deeper. And so now at this point, I can remember my entire life-ish mostly. There's still gaps of the positive experiences, the times where life was like good and normal and fun and easy and good. But full memory of all of the hardships, full memory of all of the intensities, a lot of memories from those 5 years of healing where there were no autobiographical memories being created, but everything was being processed in such a fragmentation. It just feels really different. It doesn't feel like me, which is why it helps to describe it third person as well, because it's not me.
Yeah.
Everything was a living hell then. And, anyway. And so now I have this memory of it, but it's fully integrated. So I will share with you now my one healing modality that allowed me to transform all of it. Before I do, are there any questions about the story that I shared?
No, go ahead. You're doing great. I
Okay,
love this.
perfect. Thank you. So the one healing modality is based in neuroscience. It's based in understanding attachment theory and neuroplasticity and neurodevelopment. And so when we're a young child, there's our infinite, eternal, sacred, divine soul essence plooped into a body. And the body is born into this world with a blueprint of a potential being. But the being of who you are right here, right now, hasn't developed yet. There's just the blueprint for it. And you can look at that blueprint in different ways. The soul put its intentions in. There's some, energies that are, part of the family that you chose to be born in and stuff. But it's, and the capacity to develop in a unique way that fits the human species, if you will. But it's just a blueprint. It doesn't have details. You don't have a sense of self yet. It hasn't formed. And then as you're born, there's these interactions with other people, these interactions with other people. And as you interact with other people, beginning as that infant looking into the eyes of a parent where you don't even know what they're saying or you're not aware of your existence, but there's this very innocent eye contact, right? And even as an infant, you can only see about a 6 to 12 inches, if that, away from your face. You're designed to only see the eyes of the person taking care of you when you're first born. And then you grow up and you have these interactions. And based on that social engagement, your body learns to navigate the love it desires to experience. And this happens through feeling seen, loved, valued, wanted, treasured, celebrated, safe, secure, stable, sustained, protected, provided for, supported, connected with vulnerability and closeness, collaboration, community, respect, recognition, embrace, allowance, opportunity, space, purpose, importance, right? Sense of belonging. And so in relation with these needs, something I call attachment needs or relational needs, the body learns to navigate its own existence. And that creates the sense of self that we have and the patterns of thinking and feeling and choice and stuff. And so when there were these hundreds of challenges, it was like, okay, well, I'm not going one by one. There's no way I'm like, okay, let me work on my anxiety. Okay, let me work on the eating disorder. Okay, there's no way I'm going memory by memory and healing all of this trauma. Like, there's hundreds of debilitating health challenges from 20 years of trauma. I need a quantum catalyzer, which is the name of my business, Kristen's Quantum Catalyzer. I need something that is a tangible, actionable, step-by-step tool that will quantum leap me in a way that is backed by neuroscience, in a way that understands how my neurobiology is creating my personal experience, and even more important, understands the essence of my identity independent of what I'm experiencing. Because there was the label of dissociative identity disorder. Imagine sitting in an office of someone who is, societally believed to be a medical professional in a structured system that is recognized by society to some degree, and having a doctor say you are diagnosed with an identity that is fragmented, broken, trauma-based, disconnected, and dissociated. And that's who you are. And you're going to live with this the rest of your life. And it defines you. And there's nothing we can actually do because we don't understand what's happening, right? Like, that's what it was. And so I was like, okay, I need something backed by neuroscience that understands the neurobiological cause of every single thing I'm going through and understands how to transform it at its roots cause to rewire the brain, the body through the neuroplasticity that we now know. Like, we're not stuck with the brains we live in. We have the power to rewire them. And even deeper, even furthermore, even more importantly, can understand who I am beyond what I'm experiencing, to understand how consciousness exists and operates independently of all the stuff in the brain and the body, and who the identity of the soul really is, even while moving through this impossibility. And so that's the modality that my inner evolutionary hero created, and it changed the game, because my past self could be there. Okay, I'm in these trauma responses. I haven't slept in 2 weeks. I've been in a dissociative blackout. I'm on these ice packs because my body's in so much pain, and I'm on oxygen tubes because my body can't even process the air around me. And I'm in nonstop trauma flashbacks, and my whole identity is consumed by this. And like, I can't even eat or sleep, right? And she could be in that using the modality I'm about to share with you, massive buildup because it's worth it. And have full connection with her power, full connection with the truth of her soul, full connection and attunement with who she really was beyond all of it, and have the power to understand exactly what was happening and exactly how to rewire it. And so understanding that everything we're experiencing now was first created through that social engagement, Kate. All the patterns, everything I described, every challenge, all of the oxygen deprivation, the nervous system dysregulation, the tachycardia, bradycardia, split brain hemispheres, aphasia, all the mental health battles, the psychosis, the depression, the self-harm, everything I've described can all be described in a very simple category. They're disruptions of navigation through the inner navigation of our thoughts and our feelings and who we are, the navigation, and regulation, which is the energy flows of the brain and the body, navigation, regulation. Okay, Okay, so we're doing better, right? I don't need to heal 100 debilitating health challenges. I just need to heal my navigation and my regulation. That makes it so much more doable. Like imagine getting a diagnosis from a doctor's office and they're like, "Oh, okay, we've articulated, 176 different challenges that are disabling you, okay? Well, all we need to do is heal the navigation and the regulation." That's all I have to do. That's a doable diagnosis, right? So like
Yeah.
that shift alone was this huge reclamation of power and to understand the neuroscience of it. Okay. So then it's no. I want to make it simpler. I want one thing to heal. I want one thing to heal that will heal all of it. So what is the foundation of the navigation, the thoughts, the feelings, the choices, the habits, the sensations, the identity, navigation, and regulation, the brain waves, the nervous system, all that. What's underneath the navigation and the regulation? And it was this discovery of attachment systems. And so in this early life journey, as we socially engage with other people, the body is learning to navigate the love it desires to experience with those specific needs that I mentioned: seen, loved, valued, wanted, supported, connected, all of that. And so based on the well-being of those attachment needs or relational needs, the body holds an energy of love. And when the body holds a higher energy of love, then it navigates from love. And if the relational or attachment needs have not been met, like from 20 years of complex trauma, then the navigation and the regulation will be disrupted. And that can manifest in hundreds and thousands of different ways. And so if we heal the attachment systems, we heal the foundation that precedes everything we're experiencing. And so big drum roll for the massive epic buildup. The one healing modality was to rebuild my body-mind attachment systems. And so there was a practice of having distinction and connection between two aspects of self, just like two people interacting the way we are now. And in this process, there was social interactions inside of the self that helped parts feel the fulfillment of their inner needs and create these inner relationships inside of the self and spark a felt sense of unconditional love inside of the body. And every time a part from the past who is here now inside of the navigation of the body mind, every time a part felt the fulfillment of the need of the love that wasn't available to them, the nervous system would like collapse into itself with this like exhausted relief. Like, I'm finally seen. I'm finally held. I'm finally valued and wanted. And the brain would make these new neural connections. All the trauma data would start to integrate. The brain hemispheres would have new connections. The prefrontal cortex was like super lit up. The mohawk of self-awareness was going through healing. The nervous system got more relaxed. Like all of these shifts and the neural networks that precede our patterns of thought and feeling, habit, choice, which is, our mental health, our emotional health, our habitual or behavioral health, and our somatic or physical health, the way we feel in our body. All of it was just making new connections. And I wasn't working with the trauma data. I wasn't working with the memories. I wasn't working with the symptoms. I wasn't working with psychology. I wasn't working with the thoughts or the feelings. I was working with these attachment needs, these relational needs, where these parts are begging to finally feel love in their body. And the second that I was able to create that through a specific process, there's a certain way to do it where it does have the power to create this quantum healing. There was this accelerated expansion, and symptoms were being reduced and healing was taking place. And it was just like collapsing time in terms of the time we think it takes to heal. It was so accelerated. And that one modality, healing attachment needs, creating these relational experiences inside the self, feeling love in the body, fulfilling these attachment needs, changed everything.
That's huge. That's impactful. I mean, just I think about myself too, and just healing some of those traumas and the neural my reactions as well to all my childhood things. That if I knew those kind of theories and those kind of concepts going into this, I would be able to do the same thing and help change and have that feeling, because all we want is to be seen, loved, like you, exactly what you said, right? That's
Yeah.
literally the core that drives everything, the navigation system.
Everything, everything. Like if you look at every behavior and pattern and habit and the relationship, like it manifests in so many ways. So it's hard to understand that it comes down to one thing, but everything that all the collective consciousness, thoughts and emotions and habits and beliefs and everything driving work and choices and relationships and all of it is just the body mind trying to navigate its inner need to experience love. And the profound part is that as we awaken to our soul, we understand the collision between it, right? So the body mind develops through this process of what I call attachment development or social engagement, nourishing the body mind, learning to navigate its existence or whatever. And in that process, the body mind's trying to navigate love, right? But the soul is love. The soul is love. So the body mind is just trying to navigate who it already is, but it doesn't know that. And that's like the process of spiritual awakening. Like a lot of times we can get into spirituality and, well, what do you believe about this and that? And we can really make it simple and say, we're trying to return home to the love that we are. And that allows us to transcend the different beliefs that might be held and whatnot. And it's just, consciousness is love. The soul is love. Source, divine, God, eternal essence, however you want to describe it. The essence of self, our true self, is love. We are love's presence. We are the presence of love. We are love's presence. We are love's bliss. We are love's joy. We are love's embodiment. We are love's worthiness. We are love's abundance. We are love's peace. We are love's freedom. We are love's power. We are wholeness, because love is already complete in itself. When there is perfect love, there is nothing being needed beyond it. And that was the power of this, because when my past self was going through these symptoms, the moment that she was creating love and presence in the midst of it, she had already won, because love is complete. And so it wasn't, I'm complete when I'm healed from complex PTSD. I'm complete when I can recognize who I see in a mirror. I'm complete when I no longer have 2-hour-long panic attacks. Like I'm whole and complete because I'm feeling my own love and presence in the midst of it. In the eye of the tornado, I am the love and the presence. I am whole and complete. I am perfect love in the midst of it. And that was how she was able to heal it, because she wasn't identifying with it or responding to it. She was being love and presence in the midst of it. And that has power to transform, transcend, transmute everything else, because it can't be a vibrational match. You can't
No.
have complex PTSD and love in the same energy field.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? Is to continue and balance that out between both sides of the hemisphere and on a day to day. Because I know I struggle with that at times too. I like to think that I'm above awareness and the self love, but I still struggle with that daily reminder to be kind and to do all these behavior patterns that and not feel that anxiety, feel those traumas, right? And that's a challenge in today's society that we have a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
But it does seem like your modality, that was a great buildup, by the way. That was a great buildup. I mean,
Thanks.
think about it. You took all those problems, complications she had, everything else, and you basically put them all together and just found one solution to one thing that trickles down to the whole body itself and
Yeah.
who you are in essence, right?
Yeah. And the miraculous part was, it's so beautiful to explain it so simply, but the journey of discovering that wasn't simple or easy. She was
Yeah.
learning about split brain hemispheres and the way that different parts of the brain contribute to our experience. And part of her left brain hemisphere was basically like just obliterated, like a little bomb had gone off and that part of the brain didn't exist anymore. In an MRI and different images, it looked very similar to if someone had a severe stroke where that part of the brain was just knocked out. It wasn't there anymore. Like she had to regrow her brain on her own, like it was mind blowing. And so the concepts that I share integrate insights about left, right brain hemispheres through split brain models and theories, integrates insights about the triune brain, including work from Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. It includes understandings of internal family systems model and different therapeutic parts work, brain spotting techniques where you can activate unconscious memories through particular eye movements, EMDR, which also incorporates eye movements and reaching into the body to integrate things, and understanding of the polyvagal theory and the autonomic nervous system and the different roles of social engagement that play into it, and unconscious memories. And that uses work from Peter Levine with somatic experiencing. Like there's all these different things. And then you bring in the fragmentation of the soul. I think that's one of the most important pieces, is that when we have those past experiences where those inner needs are not being fulfilled, where we're not connected with the capacity to feel the fulfillment of what we need and feel the love in our body, there's a part of the self or an aspect of the soul that gets broken off or fragmented or cut off. And I describe it through body-mind islands, because it's not necessarily like that part of the soul is no longer here, not connected to the body. It's in the body, but it's in a region of information that isn't connected with everything else. So if you imagine, there's this beautiful, beautiful landmass, and there's like, a trillion different highways connecting all these cities and all these people, and there's all this variety, there's all this diversity. There's mountains and valleys and deserts and big cities and small towns, right? There's variety. You can go through and you can experience a lot of it, and there's connection between all the people. But then you have an island that's like way out in the middle of the ocean, and it has no awareness of that landmass. And there's just a couple people on this tiny island that doesn't have like anything. Like it's a small piece of, sand and desert or whatever it is. And it doesn't have variety. You can't see different things. You can't experience different things. And it's just stuck in this repeat loop of that past experience. And that's where you get things that come on repeat. Like if there's a thought that gets stuck, a thought pattern that goes on a repeat loop, it's because this fragmented aspect of self is on a body-mind island that doesn't have full connection with the rest of the self or all the other potentials of navigation and regulation. And so every single one of the challenges that my past self was facing was this fragmentation of self, where there's like hundreds, for her it was like hundreds and thousands of body mind islands, and all these parts of the self didn't know about each other, and all these islands were filled with this garbage. Like imagine living on an island that's basically like a dump, right? Like from all the trauma messages, right? And so it was rebuilding the body mind, these land masses that you live on, and reconnecting all the people or the aspects of the soul. And so there's this fragmentation of self that happens. And so as we rewire the body mind, we're reunifying the soul. And that's why my modalities work with both neurobiology to transform the root cause of our experience, and consciousness to reunify the self and repattern your identity through love and wholeness.
That is so impactful, and thank you for sharing that. That is crucial to our system and how we work. Thank you for sharing all that information. Thank you for sharing all your story. I'm going to segment now to, if you had one message to give to the audience here that's listening, that's going through everything you've gone through, and in this journey of self-healing and everything else, what would be that message?
Establish love and presence as a daily practice, and know that in the practice of love and presence, showing up every single day for yourself, you have already won.
That's beautiful. It's true. It's true, because I consistently try to go by that exact philosophy, and just trying to, because at the end of the day, you already won, and everything else will come in kind. How do people find you, about what you do and everything else?
Absolutely. Thank you. You can find me on Instagram. I'd absolutely love to connect. Feel free to send a message, reach out and be like, hey, I heard you on, this podcast and whatnot. And then I have a few free introductory gifts, different masterclass videos, playbooks, and things to introduce you to my world. And then if you'd like to dive deeper, I do have a one-on-one mentorship offering. It's a 3 or 6 month journey, and we go deep into basically the things that I shared about, and we get to know all parts of you and create this felt sense of love love in your body in a way that allows deeper connection within the self and rewires the root cause of any disruption of well-being. And the whole purpose is to expand so that you can experience more of that presence, bliss, joy, embodied worthiness, abundance, peace, love, wholeness, freedom, confidence, empowerment, and to really just enjoy the luxurious home of your body, mind, soul. Because the one person we're guaranteed to share life with every moment of every day for the whole life is our own inner being. And the one place we're guaranteed to live in and have an experience of life through is our body, mind. And so when we create this foundation of love in our body, mind, soul, with this unity of self and, this deep transformation of the brain body wiring so that we can support the love that we are, everything else in life positively changes and ripples out. So I do have that one-on-one mentorship offering if you'd like to dive deeper.
Yeah, I know I've looked at some of that, and there are some impactful information there to help. And what is that Instagram handle again?
Kristen's Quantum Catalyzers, and we can share it in show
Per-
notes and whatnot as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I would definitely love for you to come back on and we dive deeper into this neuroscience and everything else next time.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.